This is a Tracking the Tropics update with the certified most accurate weather team at First Coast News.
We're going to give you a detailed update on, we're calling it Tropical Depression 10. We think it's just about a given. It will eventually be called IDALIA. That's how it's officially being pronounced, IDALIA. And IDALIA will impact our weather. It's going to happen on Wednesday. But remember, it's just now as we're finishing up the middle part of the weekend, and there's a lot of ifs to this forecast. So at the very least, please check back in on the updates. Even the National Hurricane Center will be the first to tell you that when the first advisory comes out, and this was the first advisory, came out at 5 p.m., then there's updates every 3 hours, and we'll have updates every 3 hours until this cyclone, which we expect to become a storm and then a hurricane until it finally moves away from the southeast U.S. So more than likely, we will be giving you updates at least every 3 hours through Wednesday night, possibly could be through Thursday. So again, these numbers will be adjusted. Please check back. But at least it's a pretty good baseline with what is going on here, especially because we have somewhat of a consensus with what the computer models think are going on. And we'll talk about the ifs in the forecast. So here are all the numbers as it gradually ramps up. Doing a close in because it's going to be closing in on us eventually. I would say the part of the forecast I feel most confident about is the timing, that we will be most significantly impacted. When I say we, yes, of course, talking about the Jacksonville area, but all of the first coast of northeast Florida, southeastern Georgia. And notice all of us are under the cone of concern. Now remember, the cone is not showing us where the bad weather will be. It could be beyond the cone. The cone is simply saying this is the official forecast track. But almost 4 days out, the eye, if it has an eye, or let's say the core or the worst the forecast hurricane has to offer, could make landfall as far to the south as Cedar Key or possibly as far to the west as Panama City. But this is the official forecast, and we'll continue to, again, update that. There'll be updates to the official forecast every 6 hours, but there'll be updates on what's happening with the actual cyclone every 3 hours. Here's what we call the big three. That is, there's a lot to talk about, but we will occasionally try to break it down to just the headlines. And these headlines will also shift, and hopefully they will get more specific as we get closer to actual landfall. But for now, and this is really our first big three with what will eventually be IDALIA. So the tropical cyclone is forming. It's what we call a tropical depression. Once we have sustained winds of gale force, storm force, we call it a tropical storm. Technically, it's in the Caribbean, although there are thunderstorms associated with the cyclone in the Gulf right now, but should be fully in the Gulf by Monday and then becoming a hurricane as it makes landfall. So to be clear, we have a lot going on here. In fact, Hurricane Franklin, just the fact that it's a hurricane, it's a bigger deal, and Franklin is expected to become possibly a Category 3 hurricane. But we feel very confident Franklin will pass east of us by over 600 miles, possibly with winds of well over 100 miles per hour. But the only impact for us, and we continue to be very confident about this, is that we will simply have a higher rip current risk. That'll be Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Okay, so here's another look. Watch the two. And eventually, although IDALIA may not seem like much now, it will become a pretty significant event. But for the next couple of days, if we're just looking at which cyclone is strongest, certainly it is Hurricane Franklin, continue to intensify. But because IDALIA is our focus, let's focus in on IDALIA. A couple of things going on here. We see some thunderstorms. This is about the core, but the strongest winds are actually away from the core. One of the reasons that we do think that this system will eventually intensify is a little tough to see here, but the upper level winds are actually already blowing away from it in an anticyclonic fashion. These systems need to breathe. That is, the surface winds go in counterclockwise, the upper level winds blow out the other way. And although there's a lot of other ingredients going on, with that set, that's one of the reasons why long term we think the system will intensify. A lot of ifs in the forecast, but if you're following, well, if you're trying to be your own forecaster, watch this. It's a cluster of thunderstorms showing up, and they're going to come and go over the next couple of days, but it actually signifies what we call a kicker, a ripple, a short wave in the upper levels. Anyhow, that's going to drop to the south. As that drops to the south, currently some shear and some dry air that's over the northeast Gulf of Mexico, which would be an inhibitor for eventually IDALIA. But as that drops to the south, and that'll kick out the shear, and the shear, at least for a bit, will decrease. And as it does so, then that will allow IDALIA to intensify. And the faster that drops to the south, this ripple, let's say around the Arklatex drops to the south, then also the farther the west the landfall will be. And generally speaking, at least right now, from this vantage point, it looks like the farther the west the landfall, the stronger the hurricane will be. Farther to the east, maybe somewhat weaker. Could be the difference between a tropical storm / Cat 1 landfall versus maybe a Cat 2 or stronger landfall. But for now, let's go with the official forecast, which brings a hurricane onshore Wednesday morning southwest of Lake City. So for all of us on Sunday, pretty much like it's been. Sunday, maybe day of rest, but watch for updates. Now, I do not expect any tropical storm warnings or watches until Monday for our area. You'll see them in other regions, but I don't expect any watches and warnings for our area until Monday. Remember, watches are issued 48 hours prior to when we expect tropical storm force winds. And I don't expect tropical storm force winds here until Wednesday morning. On Sunday, again, relatively nice weather, not a bad day to go to the beach. Now, the rip current risk will increase come Monday and Tuesday. But again, just because we're talking about this developing system certainly isn't me saying to not be out and about on Sunday. If not resting, then out and about. Although, of course, it's going to be a hot day. There will be a sea breeze out around the beaches. Notice that the ocean temperature, 86 degrees, even warmer in the Gulf. And remember, the warmer the waters, the more at least potential energy that can get into that developing tropical cyclone, especially if the upper level winds, that's about 15 to 30,000 feet, continue to be conducive for development. On to Monday we go. Monday's weather, relatively quiet. It's just Monday we will be watching specifically for the watches and the warnings from the National Hurricane Center. And that's when we, hopefully, and I think we should have a pretty specific idea where the landfall is going to be. And then it's going to be a question, I think, by Monday of how much will IDALIA intensify as it goes from the southeast Gulf of Mexico and then makes landfall, let's say, between Apalachicola and then Cedar Key. Even on Tuesday, although showers will be on the increase, even on Tuesday, you still will have time to prepare for IDALIA on Wednesday, even though it could be under watches and warnings. It'll just be increasing showers, not really all that stormy until maybe about Tuesday night. I would say for most of us, the main concern will be things that might blow around. So between Sunday and Tuesday, for most of us, I would make sure loose stuff in your yard or around your business, try to take care of, because that loose stuff could cause damage around your place, but also around your neighbors as well. Now, how strong will the winds be? Well, partly depends on how much stronger IDALIA becomes and where it makes landfall. Generally speaking, I think for a lot of us, we could be looking at wind gusts near 60, maybe higher. That would be on Wednesday over northeast Florida and southeastern Georgia. Now, as a reminder, or to put this in perspective, when we have a severe thunderstorm warning, that means winds gusting up to about 60. So at least in isolated spots, gusts to 60, and at the very least, that would mean some occasional power outages. Now, if, and this is a big if IDALIA goes exactly as forecast, and it won't, but if it goes close as forecast, then you folks out toward the Suwannee, you folks out into especially western Baker into Columbia County, and then getting and draw the line all the way up to Ware County and Waycross, you could see gusts to 75 miles per hour, maybe higher, because this hurricane I don't think is going to weaken quickly as it heads off to the north and to the northeast. So again, the most confident part of the forecast is whatever IDALIA has to offer us, Wednesday is going to be the day. Or another way to say that, there's no need to rush. We have a lot of time to prepare and just to see what this is going to do. So maybe here's Wednesday, here's the day. Tomorrow we'll still be watching to see what it's doing technically in the Northwest Caribbean. It's still 800 miles away, all right? In fact, it's farther away right now than Franklin will be when it passes us. It's just eventually it's going to become closer. So then on Monday, remember Monday's weather not bad at all, but Monday we'll see the watches and the warnings. Tuesday, the showers and the winds will increase from the south, but even on Tuesday, daytime Tuesday, I don't think it's going to be a dangerous day, even for you folks out around Columbia County. Now, by Tuesday night, certainly you combine night and the approach of the possible hurricane, hopefully all of us will have what we need to get done on Tuesday night. Then for now, we're going to call Wednesday wet and windy with possibly some hurricane conditions. Now, for those of you traveling or you're thinking about traveling, remember this is going to go north and then northeast. So we'll be updating this as well, but as it makes landfall southwest of Lake City on Wednesday, then it's going to go to about the Augusta area. And then by Thursday, as our weather conditions will be improving, Thursday it should be up toward, well, in South Carolina and then North Carolina and then gradually headed away. I think sometimes it helps to handle these situations to know when things are going to improve. And I think because this system should move pretty quickly once it starts moving, that our worst weather is Wednesday, dramatically improving weather, and maybe even slightly cooler as we head toward Thursday and Friday. That's how it looks for now. I promise there will be adjustments, and we're going to have updates for you every 3 hours, probably through at least Wednesday.
This has been a Tracking the Tropics update from the First Coast News certified most accurate weather team.